there's 10 steps that I take you through in the book of how to do this, how to journal, whatever, how to understand the beast, how to find authenticity in that voice, how to confess your soul, how to eliminate all that noise, and how do you formulate a battle plan to take on and win the war within.
You're listening to Give Yourself Some Leeway with me, your host, Eugene Lee. Over the last 5 years, through my burnout experience, podcasting, and coaching, I have learned a lot about burnout recovery as a high achiever. What to do, what not to do, and the common mistakes that many people, like myself, make along the way. This podcast is dedicated to help you break the burnout cycle. Optimize your life for peak performance when you need it most, and rediscovering how to truly enjoy living again. That's the key to your growth and success. Luke, what is your message right now? Who is it that you want to serve?
Right now, where I'm at in my life, it's a result of many, many hurdles and lessons. But where I am right now is I've just written a book, and it's focused on business owners like myself, or entrepreneurs, if you want to call them, who've had a lot of success in life externally. So looking from the outside, they may have achieved financial goals, business success goals, but internally, the journey has been rampant. So the success internally hasn't happened. And that could be, burnouts, work-life imbalance. Basically, I call the book The War Within. So externally, you're chasing these bits and pieces. Internally, you're burning. So my mission is, after I'm 52, I've done a lot of good things. I've made a lot of mess. The stage I'm at in is like, how do you bring that internal peace to your life? Because I've done all the stuff externally. I've done it very well through lessons. But one thing I've never accomplished was that internal peace. And my message, the book that I've written, is all about people like myself, entrepreneurs who've been through the fires of hell doing businesses, but haven't quite won the war within.
I guess that's part of the entrepreneurial journey when you look away from the embellished gold plated version that are the overnight success that you see on social media and look at how much of a journey it is to be an entrepreneur and what's behind the grind and the ups and the downs, all the downs that people don't see on social media.
Well, 100%, this whole thing began, my story was I started at an early age of 23. I always loved the entrepreneurial drive. I started with $800 in my father's shed. At age 23, I built that to a $12 million business in 5 years. I was Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year at age 25. I had all these fancy awards as a kid. Thought I was Rambo, but, I was flying around, and it was not sustainable. I didn't have the mental capacity, and I burned out and lost that whole business. I got wiped out, went bankrupt. And, that I continued to build businesses throughout my life. So I went from wipeout, I rebuilt quickly, built an international distribution business that was worth $3.5 million. I did it in 3 years. I've been on stage that have been headlined by big names like Richard Branson, Tim Ferriss. I wasn't the head speaker, but we were part of that, which was very, I'm very proud of that. So I did all these things externally, built all these businesses over the years. But I kept repeating these destructive cycles internally. I kept burning out. I had all this stuff. I had the time freedom, the money freedom. And there were a couple of lessons that I learned through this journey. And the first one was, I was reflecting back over my 30 years of building businesses. I was building it like most other business owners, most entrepreneurs. They're chasing the two things, the two F's, I call them: time freedom and money freedom. Because if you think, well, I used to think, and I know many entrepreneurs think like this: if we just have enough money, then all your problems go away and you're going to live the life of your dreams. But that's the trap right there, because there's the third F, the most important, that's mind freedom. And I know many business owners, entrepreneurs, they don't even know about this, or they don't know how to get this fixed in their lives like me. And that was a journey of continuously fighting mind freedom, just thinking, okay, if I chased all these things, that's going to fix my mind. Of course, that's the trap. One of the other lessons I learned was goal setting is a trap. Now, I know we're all told to set goals and all that, but in business environment, most people go into business because they want the lifestyle of their dreams. And what does that mean to them? It means I want to get that big house, I want to get that car, I want to get that boat, I want to do this, I want to do all these cool things. I want to conquer the next big deal, the new territory. This is pursuit of business. But I found that setting all these goals and kept burning out, even though I was achieving all these goals financially and successfully in business terms, I was still burning out. I still had all these self-sabotaging traits come through. So the happiness and internal peace can't be, once I've got this big house, I'm going to be happy. Or once I do this big deal or get this big fancy office and have 200 staff, then I'm going to be happy. Because that's the trap right there, right? This process of internal peace and fulfillment has to be part of that journey. It can't be in 3 years' time, because I've did that for 30 years. All I did was move the goalposts. There I'm chasing. The internal peace just doesn't happen, right? So that was another big problem that I had to figure out. And, so despite all these successes, I almost had a stroke at 35. Kept burning out. And then I had, in 2019, but 7 years ago at the time of this, I had a business. It was a stupid idea, but I did it anyway. And what happened is I actually mentally broke down. I had a thing called paralysis anxiety, where I was bedridden for 6 weeks. Now, I've never experienced anything like this in my life. This thing just hit me and I was floored. My poor wife didn't know what the hell happened. I don't know what happened. And so basically, it was at that transformational point. And when I say transformational point, it was like my mind broke apart, because for all these 30 years that I've been building businesses and the whole of my life, I had all these wiring, if you want to call it. My mindset had a particular structure. That's how I lived. That's how I rolled. And I went full force. That's just how I rolled, right? But it wasn't serving me. And I kept, these self-sabotaging traits kept burning me out, destroying me. And I had no internal peace, no matter what I did externally. So it was at this like complete breakdown where, maybe the answers actually don't lie outside, because I've done all the stuff. None of it works. Perhaps it's time to look within. And that's where the real journey of self-discovery begins. It's like, okay, I'm going to have a conversation with my inner guide. But someone like myself, how the hell do you start that? I mean, how do you know what to say? Who's there? Is it your voice? Is it your imagination? Is it fear? What's the system, whatever the thing, like, how does this whole thing work? Because part of my problem for me personally is I'm an engineer. So I'm a logical person. I need structure. I need strategy. I need steps. If I do something, I need to see some kind of outcome. I need to see that I'm moving forward. So this thing of, going inside and what, it doesn't make any sense. And the second problem I had when I actually tried to find help for someone like myself, who's ambitious, I didn't want to do less, because I actually do love building businesses. It's my true passion in life. But I definitely wanted the peace. I wanted to stress less. I wanted to worry less. I wanted fulfillment and peace, and I wanted alignment with my ambition. Now, that's a complicated sentence I've just said there, because when I was trying to do all these, read these books and courses and spiritual this, and it was all counterintuitive. It's all about, if you don't want to stress, do less, like do less, more tranquility. No, that's not what I want. So that prompted me to write my book and create a structure. So I went through a journey of 7 years, whatever it was, trying to figure out a structure of how does a person like myself actually fix someone like myself. And so, that's why I wrote the book, The War Within. And there's basically 5 steps, 4 wars, that battles. And I do refer to battles because the process of internal healing, if you want to call it, or finding out about yourself, I don't think it's for pansies. It's not I don't think you can just sit on a mat and hum. And for me, it was vicious. It was very confronting. And I had to completely break myself into 1,000 pieces to rebuild. And that was a journey.
I think that's putting it very well, that it is very tough. And a lot of people, and especially men, find that they think it's emasculating to confront, as you say, the war within, that, or they feel that they cannot be vulnerable with those emotions because they have never dealt with those emotions before. They try to be stoic about, or stubborn, or have a show this strong facade for so long, and they feel that to be vulnerable with those emotions is taking their masculinity away from them. And
Correct.
if anything, it's the direct opposite. It's finding a man who's able to be vulnerable with those emotions and still have integrity without having emotional outbursts, without feeling insecure. And if they do, that they can be open, they can openly talk about those emotions that trigger them. It's going into that journey of self-discovery that is the key for someone to embrace their integrity, embrace what it means to be human. And I think that's kind of where we find ourselves in the situation, as you say, with dealing with that war within. If we are not open to feeling those emotions, to embracing those emotions and seeing them for what they are, then it's very hard for us to be a whole well-rounded human.
Correct. I think, one of the things that I've experienced over my life, I mean, there's 5 steps, and maybe you ask me what they or how this interview goes, but I'll just touch on the first one because I think it's really important. Part of this journey, the first step about this whole process of, where do I start or whatever, is it's discovering your true self. Because if you're going to go on a journey of self-discovery, whatever, the first starting point is, where are you stuck? Like, and that is, like, who are you really? Because if you start on this journey and you're not true to yourself, the whole building is going to collapse again. Obviously, internally, now, we've been through the external part, and you know, the what I found when I sat down and worked out how to figure all this stuff out was, there's various takes on this, but for me, I think you have 4 lives. Some people say you have 3, some people have 7, whatever. For me, it was the 4 lives. Your spiritual life, your relationship life. There's your financial life, and then there's your relationship with you. And out of all those 4, I think the relationship with you is where a lot of people get stuck. They either are selflessness, they give away too much, or they're too self-absorbed. And that's because they don't know who they are. And you obviously, in today's world, you have to have money to live. You don't have to have ultra millions, but unfortunately, you have to have money to live. And you need some sort of spiritual life, whatever that means to you. It means many things to many people, regardless of what your beliefs are. That's everyone has this inside thing in their brain, and they connect to something bigger. Whatever that belief is for you, it doesn't matter. You've got to connect. But I think that whole process begins with authenticity of who are you really. That sounds so simple. Like, it really says, oh yeah, sure, I like this and that. It's actually easier to find out what makes you unhappy than what makes you happy. And the reason for that is how there's psychology tests and all that have done. It's all in the book. It's people relate negative situations or trauma in their life, they hold on to that way longer than a happy occasion. So it's easier for them to work out what doesn't make them happy than what actually makes them happy. And you basically, the step one is actually creating authenticity of who are you really, like where are you really stuck in your life across these 4 lives, and you know, getting to face that.
And where does that start? Let's say, what kind of questions would you get someone to ask themselves in order to find themselves, find out who they are? What's a good starting point for someone?
The starting point of that is you write down those 4 lives, and then you say, okay, out of my 4 lives, my spiritual life, my financial life, my relationship life, whether you're married or not married or whatever, and yourself, which of those lives dominates you the most? So like as a kid growing up, I mean, my financial life dominated me. And there's a really good reason, which I'm coming to, because this is the point, right? When I sat down and analyzed these lives, I was like, which dominates me? Why do I wake up every morning at this unbelievable drive to make money? Why the hell does this happen? It drives me nuts. I mean, I love the process, but I want this hammer in my head every goddamn morning when I wake up that I have to have millions of dollars because then I'm going to have peace. This was this first step. Why the hell is this happening? This is dominating my life and ruining the rest of my 3 notes. I'm completely out of balance, right? So your life becomes, this is why you burn out. This is why you become mad in the head. So there was destructive patterns happening in one of my lives, and no one's completely balanced. I mean, some people are better than others, but if you do that, you'll find which one dominates you. You will have success in one lives more than in others. So where are you least successful? And you get a picture of where you sit in life, and you see where you're stuck. That's a starting point. And when I did this process, then the next step is called facing the mirror, which I call. And it's okay. So here I am. So I know where I'm stuck. The next question is, well, why am I stuck like this? When I look in the mirror, yeah, I know who I see, but what does this mirror really see? And what the mirror sees is all the masks you put on as you go through life. So we all have self-sabotaging traits that stem from things. I'm going to tell you a story in a sec. So, and all those masks that we wear that we put on to hide our insecurities, fears, phobias from society. You know, we dress up so society can see who we want them to see. That we don't want them to see our weaknesses or insecurities. Those are all the masks. And the more masks you wear, the more you move away from your true authentic self. So that's why a lot of people are so confused, because they're living a life not true and authentic to them. So the second step is facing that mirror. Why are you stuck? How do you recognize? I call these the beasts within. And these are the the things that hold you hostage to you becoming your true self. These are these beasts. They drive your actions and behaviors, but it's not authentically you. So let me bring this into context. So one of the, as I said, the biggest problems I had from a young kid, I always wanted to make money. I love making money. That was my drive. And that was cool because I did very well at it. But over the years, I kept burning out. I eventually said, I'm sick and tired of this. I'm sick and tired of burning out. Why the hell? Which beast? There's a beast in me that is controlling this behavior. And then I really thought about this. And it was my father once told me a story about his grandfather, obviously my grandfather. And when my grandfather was a young boy, it was wartime. And his family had no food and very little money. So to survive, the family would live on onions and bread. So I call this the bread and onion story. Now, my grandfather told that story to my father. So my grandfather never wanted that situation to happen to his family. My father never wanted that to happen to his family, and I certainly would never want that to happen to my family. So this beast sitting inside of all of us, this had generations of attention and was there for a huge gnarly beast that was passed down, passed down, passed down. So, every family's got situations like this. Sorry, in our situation, um, we had uh, all the discussions around about wasting money and saving money and all these things, and this fear um, dictated family decisions. That's how I grew up, right? So this is how I shaped my life. I had this fear of running out of money and running out of time to make the money. And this was what was the constant burnout. I could never, it doesn't matter if you had 2 million, $3 million in the bank, it didn't matter because that beast was bigger than the outcome. So this is what you call, as a result of that, all these self-sabotaging traits start to grow inside you. So you always got excuses why you have to work late. You always got these things why you have to do this and build this and get this target. Because if I don't get that, that's never going to make happy. It's that beast inside controlling you. And at the end of the day, my father and I, we had the same beasts, and we just fed them differently. He came from a point where if I save money, I'm never going to run out of money. My point was I'm going to continue to make money so I never run out of money.
So that self-sabotaging, let's say generational trauma that affected both your father and you, from what I can see, it could be mistaken as, if you didn't realize it was a beast, you would think it was your intuition. It was telling you that this is what you need to do so that you don't end up like your grandfather's bread and onion story. And it doesn't show itself as a beast until you do some digging or until you have some hindsight. In that moment, it feels like the reason why you're doing this behavior is because your intuition is telling you to do so. That and that's something that I have seen also, is that these self-sabotaging behaviors hide themselves behind some form of logic in your mind, that you're doing this for a very valid, logical reason. There's a reason for all of this. It's part of your identity, it's part of your nature, it's part of your intuition. Oh, this is something that's been passed down for generations, and this is why I behave this way, and that there's nothing I can do about it. That's a belief that I feel holds a lot of people back, and the reason why they continue this self-sabotaging behavior.
Well, this is the thing. This is the reason I wrote this book. With someone like me who's a logical engineer, this was like, how the hell do you start this? Exactly what you're saying. When you start this process, who are you? What is this voice? Where's it coming from? Why am I driving it? And it's not your true voice. And you have to, and this is basically ultimately where when I come through these four battles, I go to a journal, which I'll chat to you about shortly. And this is the process, exactly what you're saying. How do you, if you've never been through this, if you never had guidance or something on this is like another world, right? I mean, you talked about earlier about men being stronger. My father was a tough dude. He wasn't a bad father. He wasn't violent with us. He was never aggressive with us. He's a really good dude. He just had these beast, these fears and insecurities. And and one of them was like a house where there was very little emotion. That's just not that he didn't love us. It's just he didn't show emotion. That's just how it just didn't happen. So when you start saying, "Oh, I'm going inside touchy feely," what the hell? This is like, this is a new world, right? And so you've got to have some process of working through yourself. Otherwise, you actually go mad. You actually compound the problem because you get into more of a state because you're trying to figure this out. It actually gets worse because once you go inside, you got to be ready to face those demons, and you need some structure to actually handle this war.
And for a lot of people, I mean, that war within is something that they need guidance with, because especially a lot of my friends, when I first went on my journey and I said, okay, I take a lot of self reflection time. And they said, oh, I could never do that. I could never sit alone or sit in silence with my own thoughts for longer than 30 seconds or 2 minutes. It sounds like it's like mental torture for them to be alone with their own thoughts
Well, that was
for
me.
fear of what may come up.
100%. That's so true. That is so true. You just don't know what's going to pop up.
And I feel
So,
but that's, I think, the weakness of today's day and age, that we drone through our lives. We're living on autopilot. We don't question the limiting beliefs or thoughts that we've had for most of our lives. And then when something there's some distortion or discomfort that comes up, that we question it, we say, no, that's the way things have always been. That's the way things have always been. I've talked about this as well recently, about how our brain chemistry doesn't stabilize until we're like in our late 20s. I think it's after 25, I think, for guys, that your brain chemistry stabilizes. So any decision or thought that developed before I was 25, I've learned to question it. If I've had that belief, or if it was something that was taught to me before and told me, oh, that was common sense, or this is just logic. Any belief that I've been taught before the age of 25, I've learned to question that. I mean, like, why was I told that, and why did I believe that? And it's not to question it and say that everything I've learned before I was 25 is completely false. It's no. I just don't take it as gospel. I question it, see what's the reason or the logic behind that. Is it actually true? Or do I think it's true because a teacher, a parent, a friend, a mentor taught me that when I was young, and I just believed it to be true? And now I take it now with a more open mind and say, is it still true for me now? It might have been true for me as a 5 year old. Is it still true for me in my 30s? And it's just about being able to question those more openly and see, is that part of my identity? Or is that something that was passed down? As you said, the bread and onions. Was it a story that was just passed down? But it's not, it was true 50, 60 years ago, but it's not true today. I mean, if I lost 1 million, I don't think I'd have to live on bread and onions. I think we've got a bit more variety nowadays, but I think it's still able to survive. And even if I was down to bread and onions, I could still get by. It doesn't mean it's not death. It's not the end of the world, but it's still. Do I think I could still be happy with just bread and onions? I think it's about reframing it as well. And that's just
well,
something, again, that has crossed my mind. It might not cross everyone's mind, but that's, I think, how I've been breaking it down recently. Is anything that I've had before the age of 25, I've learned to question everything and see, does it still serve me now? And if it doesn't, why am I still holding on to that? Or what can I replace that thought with?
it's again, your sort of structure is very similar to mine. My step three in the process, which we on, is what I call breaking bad habits, which pretty much is, questioning, like what you call questioning. For me, your step one is where are you stuck, and step two is why are you stuck, and then step three is, well, how do I start to fix this process? How do I start to fix things? And it's like questioning, okay? So every one of us has self-sabotaging traits, and your self-sabotaging traits create your bad habits in your life. It's your coping mechanism for dealing with these traits. Now, these self-sabotaging traits, in the book, in the battles, I refer to the general of all your traits is fear. And the general is running you. He's running his army, and it's running it against you because it's self-sabotaging. And trust me, that fear, that general, he does not want to lose this war. So he's going to fight you till he wins, or he's going to make sure he's continuously in charge. This is the internal battle, right? So the step three is, you first of all got to identify these self-sabotaging traits. And then what you got to do is you got to, what I call the hack method, right? And I'll give you an example how this works. And it's very powerful because this is what I do. And basically what you're trying to do is you first of all actually confronting your self-sabotaging traits, and then you're rewiring your brain, and you want to disrupt these old damaging patterns, and you want to create new habits that allow you to get this internal peace with less stress and happiness. So here's an example of, hacking the bad habits. So anything in life starts off with an event or a starting point, and as a consequence of that, there's an action or there's a trait or a fix. And as a result of that, you get a result. And as a result of the result, you get a consequence. So, give you an example. Let's say the event was you encounter, well, let's give you another. Let's say you encounter a setback in your personal project. The trait that you developed or developing is you give up without attempting to find a solution. Now, the result is the project remains incomplete. And the consequence of that event is you avoid challenges, becomes like a habit, preventing personal growth and achievement. There's procrastination, lack of motivation, whatever. There's reasons why this happens, because maybe it's fear of achieving outcome, they're going to be criticized, whatever. So they have these things, oh, I'm too tired or whatever. They don't complete the project. So how do you hack something like that? I call it a micro hack. You practice resilience by reframing setbacks as opportunities for learning and growth. And the way I get around this is I call it a micro reward. So once you've identified these self-sabotaging traits and you're continuously doing these traits that are sabotaging you, how can you hack this and rewire your brain? And when you hack it, give yourself a little micro reward. So the little micro reward in this situation would be, after overcoming a setback, you've put a new habit in place, a positive one, treat yourself to a little celebration or indulgence, like enjoying a favorite dessert or treating yourself to a movie night. To put this in, I mean, that's example, it's a bit waffly, but in my life, a very simple example, I hate administration and paperwork and all that stuff in business. I just hate it with a passion. So one of my micro rewards or my hacks is at month end or on a Friday when I've got to get through stuff I really, really hate. I put all the stuff on my desk and I say, at the end of this at 10 o'clock, I'm going to a coffee shop and I'm going to have my favorite latte and vanilla syrup and a donut. It sounds a stupid little thing like that, but trust me, that tiny little thing gets me through that mess, paperwork and stuff that drives me nuts. And I go and have my coffee and I think, oh, I did it. It's done. I've achieved something. That's what I call a micro reward. But if you put that philosophy into your life and you start attacking these self-sabotaging traits you've identified, that is how your life changes. And that brings us to the next step when you're ready.
I love that example of the latte because it reminds me of before I was mountain climbing with one of my friends, and he was just about to give up. And he was like, I'm sick of this. I don't want to go any further. And then I reminded him on the way when we are driving home, there's this lovely cafe and in the middle of the countryside back in Ireland. And I said, when we stop off, we'll stop off at the cafe when we're finished the climbing the mountain. When we get back to the car, we'll drive down to this cafe and they do amazing buffalo mozzarella toasties. And he was there on the second, like the last 2 hours going down the mountain, trudging down the mountain. He was like, mozzarella, toasty with mozzarella, and that's what got him every step forward. He was just going mozzarella, mozzarella, but it was that micro reward that got him through the most difficult part, the last setback, that he was just like, no, I'm going to give up. I don't want to do the rest of this with you. I'm just going to he almost call for help, but he was like, no, mozzarella is going to get me through this. That micro reward for him.
It's so powerful, and that has served me. It serves me so well. So the final step in these four battles is once you've got all this lot on the table and you found that authenticity, the final step is now growing the giant within. And this is basically, you found the courage, you've identified the enemy. Now you're going to defeat the enemy. You have all the tools and the mental structure to do this. Obviously there's a journal at the end, like a set process, like I say, I'm a logical think of how you do this. But the final step is, learning to connect and trust with that inner guide. So you've worked out who's the general of fear shouting and screaming at you. That's not the true voice. And once you start to connect with that true voice, that's where you find your true potential. And it's positive and there's energy flow and you feel connected. And that is what I feel is, well, I know it is, it's your true path and purpose. And that's what leads to fulfillment and peace. And when you find that connection, you unlock the courage to defeat fear, insecurities, and self-doubt. And that's what happened to me when I broke down, when I was bedridden. All the stuff came to the surface. It was the first time in my life that I actually could talk to my wife, like vulnerably, if that's the right word. I could actually tell her all this crap that's been going on in my life. Why do I drive myself mad trying to make all this money? Because of all these things that happened to me. And that confession of your soul is the right word, releases, and it sort of like unites your army inside to go forth and conquer the rest. And that journey becomes a lot easier because you've sort of given yourself permission that I actually can be myself and forget about all this other crap around me, what people think, and am I going to upset this person or whatever. I'm just going to be me and I'm going to do what I'm supposed to be doing in this life. And that's growing the giant within. Now that sounds all easy. It is easy, the 4 steps. It's not simple. It's like a logical process. But if you're going to actually take this on, for me, you need consistency because you've got to train your army to win, right? Like this is obviously the whole theme of win the war. And so what I found was I created a journal. And it's like 10 steps that I do every single morning. And I've developed this over 30 years. I tried this for my whole life to figure this stuff out, right? But I never had the battle. I mean, the final thing was this battle where I broke down. But I always went back to my journals of how I try to scribble and how I try to figure this out. And basically these four little points. The first one is you need a consistent time, morning or evening or whatever works for you, but you have to do it every day. And it's only 10 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes. You don't need to do longer than that. This is my take, right? People do meditation for hours. That's cool. That's their thing. For me, it was like, I'm not a spiritual guru or some master meditator and all these things. This was just how do I fix and get on with my life and my passion. You've got to be comfortable. You know, one of the things I found, people say you have to sit like this and do this and breathe like this. That stuff drove me nuts. I just had to be comfortable. And the third thing was what I call your soul place. I think for me, this was the most important thing. I found, like, I grew up by the sea. The sea is where I connect. I just know that. My father was a fisherman. My grandpa was a fisherman. I'm not a fisherman, I'm a surfer. I love the sea. But whenever I go down to the sea throughout my life, I felt connected. So it's important that you have some connection, whether it's a forest, a stream, park. It could be even a quiet room with candles or whatever works for you. But it has to be a place where you actually can feel connected to your soul, your inner eternal. And that's your first challenge or task rather in establishing that routine. And once you get those 3 first pieces right, then then you begin your journal. And there's 10 steps that I take you through in the book of how to do this, how to journal, whatever, how to understand the beast, how to find authenticity in that voice, how to confess your soul, how to eliminate all that noise, and how do you formulate a battle plan to take on and win the war within.
So for people who want to start the war within, you really need to. I think like the first three battles are like the foundation, and it's only once you're concrete with those you can take on the fourth battle. I mean, it's only once you know who you really are, facing the mirror, and then changing the bad habits. Once you're crystal clear on those or concrete on those, only then can you start growing the giant. And that's kind of like the foundation I have with leeway also, is that before you can start implementing any changes or making any impact beyond your burnout, you need to have your self-awareness, your self-compassion, and your self-care set first. You have to be consistent with those before you can start taking on any other bigger projects or start having impact in any other area of your life. You need to first have that solid foundation. And that's where I feel the first three steps are critical. They're paramount to getting to your fourth battle, as you said. That if you're not 100% or at least 90% clear on the first three, you cannot go straight to four. People always look for the quick fix. They're saying like, oh yeah, I'll tick one box, tick two, tick three, and get the four, and I'm a new person. And it's like, no, this is a marathon. This is, as you said, this is a war. It's going to take a lot of work going going through the first three steps before you can face that fourth battle.
And what I found was to break this down, because I mean, again, I had no structure, and it took me years and years and years to figure all this out. How do you put this into a simple process, and I call it my 15-minute daily routine. It's a structure of how you tackle the four battles, because you can't tackle all of them at once. You've got to take it day by day. You've got to have, this is rewiring your brain to get rid of those beasts, those self-sabotaging traits. So you can't just go to war unprepared. And so this is like the mental battle plan. It's a 15-minute journal. There's 10 steps I do every single day, and I've done them for many, many years now. And it's absolutely changed my life. I don't look at things in the same way. I don't burn out anymore. I have peace in my life, which I've never had for 45 years of my life. And, the last 7 years really implementing this process you can see I'm relaxed now. I mean, if you met me 7 years, I'd be wired and carry on like a lunatic. There's beasts all screaming and shouting. But so yeah, that's hopefully that's been of use to your audience. Um, yeah.
Yeah, no, Luke, you like it was so balanced. Again, and it's just because as well, for me, it intrigued me a lot, the four steps of the war within, because it it's so similar to my leeway model of when people are burnt out, especially high achievers, when they burn out. First, they need that self-awareness, that level of self-awareness, that level of being present with themselves, being aware of themselves, because they live on autopilot for so long that they immerse themselves in their work, trying to achieve so much without having any limits or without having any ceiling to ever acknowledge what they've achieved. And it's only once they have that level of self-awareness, they need to meet themselves with compassion. If they don't have that compassion for themselves, you need to start talking to yourself like you would your best friend. And if you're not aware of who you are, it's very difficult to talk to yourself as you would your best friend if you don't know who you are first. You need that level of self awareness before you know how to treat yourself with compassion. And it's only once you know who you are and how to talk to yourself as you would your best friend that you're actually going to implement any self care routines, any good habits, any investment in yourself. You need to know who you are. You need to treat yourself like a friend, and then you're going to invest in your health. Then you're going to invest in who you want to be. And it's only once you start investing in who you want to be and taking care of yourself that you're going to have the capacity to have any impact or high performance or service or wherever you want to go in life. It's only once you have the first three pillars in place that you can start having impact on others or serving other people. So that's where I found it was very clear, or your cycle for the war within resonated a lot with my leeway model. And but it wasn't like, I was like, oh, Luke has the same model as me. Everything is ruined. It resonated more with me because I was like, okay, it's not like, okay, we've both cracked the code, but it just helped to reinforce my own belief in, okay, this is what worked for me. This is also what worked for Luke. Without ever being in contact before, we've come up with our two completely different models, but are different ways of describing a very similar model. And when I first started out in my journey, I was told, Eugene, we know what you're like. You're absolutely psychotic with your 3 a.m. gym routine before working 12 hours in the lab. And then after work, you probably have something just as psychotic lined up for yourself, which I did at the time. And and then they're saying, so whatever you did to recover from that was probably equally as psychotic. So that's not going to work for me. And I was like, okay. I was like, I'll take note. Okay, maybe my approach is not the cookie cutter approach that's going to work for everyone. And that's when I started reaching out to other people and saying, okay, what's your approach? What works for you? And over time, I realized there is a similar pattern. There is a similar human behavioral pattern as to how that cycle works. And yes, the approach isn't cookie cutter, but the cycle is very similar. We need to have that level of self awareness first. How we get to that level of self awareness can differ from person to person, but there is a way of guiding someone through that to finding themselves. What matters to them? What are their values? What is their integrity? What is integral in their lives? What is their, as I like to put it, what is their life mission statement? Have they ever considered having a personal life mission statement? And then it comes to compassion. When is the last time you spoke to yourself as you would your best friend, rather than putting yourself down and berating yourself and saying, oh, you should have done this, or you could have done that but you didn't bother, or oh, you're such a failure, this is the way you've always been. If you talk to your best friend like that, they're probably going to leave you. They're not going to be your best friend for very long. And then you have that level of self-care. If you invest in your self-care before you can, if you want to serve others, you can't do it from an empty jug. So that was my cycle. And seeing it again with you, with the war within, and very beautifully put with the four bottles, because it emphasizes this is not a quick fix. A lot of people live under the illusion, especially in the workplace. They say, oh, you've burnt out, take 2 to 3 weeks off work. You just need to rest and recover. You'll be fine in 4 weeks' time.
No, that's why I think, the journal that I have for anyone wanting to change, if you got a couple of steps that you can follow and not think, because it's very hard for someone to change a mindset if you don't know, A, what you're changing, B, how to change. If you just left in a void, chances of survival or change for a human brain, that's not going to work, right? Humans need structure. They need like ropes up a mountain. So for me, what I found essential for me is I had to come up with a step by step. I'm an engineer, so my brain is naturally wide, but I know a lot of people look for steps when they fix things, how the 5 steps on how to tie a rope or whatever. My 10-step journal was instrumental in what you're just saying. Like you understand the battles. How do you do this now? And for 15 minutes a day, for me, that's not a strain. It's not a pain in the ass. It's something I just got to do. And often when you actually talk to yourself at this level, you actually really enjoy it. You get messages and insights that it's amazing how this stuff comes to you. Okay, this is part of the process. This is like the tapping into the deep, right? But the logical process of the stuff never goes away. you can win the war, but you'll never not have battles in your life again, because the beast will continue to want to surge, right? And you got to have a journal, a strategy to make sure that you continuously, like you say, preserving yourself. I say, like, making sure the enemy doesn't return. You've got to learn to pacify these beasts, put them in bay if they pop up. What are your counter strategies to make sure that, for me, chasing my mission and passion, but without disrupting my peace, my alignment, my fulfillment. So that's it. It's an ongoing thing, and it's something that you don't just do and then you forget about it. This is part of your life. It's a daily routine to maintain. Just, I guess, if you go to the gym, you got to do some sit-ups. If you want to lose weight, you can't just do 3 sit-ups and then you got a six pack and you're never going to get fat again. This is the process. So yeah, I hope you found that of use. And if I've got, happy to give my book away free to your readers.
That was the first thing, or that was what I was going to ask next. I was like, if anyone is interested in Win the War Within, what's the best place they can find it?
So you go to my website, which is www.ideasintobusiness.com/win. So it's ideasintobusiness.com/win, and just type in the code LEE27, so lowercase LEE 27, and you can get a free download of the book with the journals. There's 7 workbooks in there. And yeah, hopefully you find that useful, and it can help you in your journey.
Luke, thank you so much. Win the War Within. You've just so beautifully put. I'm just going to say it again. You so beautifully put the battles, and especially emphasizing the battles, as you said, because again, people think there's a quick fix to recovering from burnout or recovering from any overwhelm or these self-sabotaging behaviors, where these behaviors are ingrained in our lives for decades and they are ruling us, or they're holding us back. And it doesn't need to take equally as long to overcome them, but it's still not an overnight fix. And it is grueling. It does take grit in order to overcome these behaviors and become a better version of ourselves. And have that freedom, as you said, to have time, the money, and the mind freedom in order to be a better version of ourselves and be able to show up for others in a more freeing way, also to be of better service to others. And thank you. I love the Lee 27, a nice special code for give yourself some leeway, listeners.
Definitely.
So thank you so much again for
Pleasure.
your time, Luke.
It's been lovely chatting to you, Lee, and I wish you all the best, and all the best to your listeners.
If you're feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, stuck in a rut, or running in circles all the time, trust me, I've been there too. The pursuit for peak performance, especially as a high achiever, is not about pushing harder all the time. It's about learning to work smarter, find balance, and reignite that spark that got you started in the first place. That's why I developed the Burnout Recovery Blueprint. Join me for 12 weeks to overcome your burnout. Let's break the burnout cycle and restore your vitality. Develop sustainable habits proven for peak performance when you need it most. Rediscover the meaning and purpose in the work that you do. And boost your productivity and impact without sacrificing your health. If you're ready to invest in your personal growth and success, let's break the burnout cycle together. Let's work together. Let's have that call. The link is in the show notes. Until next week, take care.